It is the fourth model introduced in the 2024 Bang Brave Bravern collaboration, sporting a design inspired off of Ira in the series. It is BRV03 Frenzy Wrath, with a largely new kit of leg killer, right killer, left killer, biped legs, and the leg ability of through fight, which grants a chance for melee attacks to bypass shields or ignore defense when attacking. Now, at the first glance, you'd probably look at Frenzy Wrath's kit and think it's going to be something entirely new and unspoken of. But when you look at the mechanics behind it, in all technicality, Frenzy Wrath is only introducing one brand new skill technically and 3 different variants of it, which, when used correctly, can be immensely catastrophic with his kit as a whole. Leg Killer, or any of the killer type moves in particular, are conventional melee type of combat skills as you see here, but each of them has a particularly unique condition that, if met, will grant a double damage bonus and piercing damage bonus when targeting. Now, for each of these particular parts, their particular condition is to correctly target the parts of their name. So Leg Killer has to target legs, Right Killer targets right arms, Left Killer targets left arms. You get the idea. It's very simple, very easy to understand. And as long as you're able to capitalize on this, you can most certainly jump on some very powerful bonuses, as you see just by the base power alone. The head and the right and the left arm pack in just over mid 1800s alone before double damage, and the left and the right arm at almost 1500. So some very solid damage opportunity if you are able to successfully hit that condition. However, that is also kind of a double-edged sword, and pun intended essentially for the basis of his design. The real drawback to the killer type moves is the fact that if you don't target the part that they're looking for correctly, you're going to be missing out on that piercing bonus and the double damage bonus. And at first glance, you might think, oh, that's actually really easy to hit. I shouldn't have too much issue with this. And you're largely right. But I do want to point out that this is going to be the first major instance of a Meta, much like it was with Bravern highlighting Bond Upper and bringing Meta-Rotters into the fight more intimately. Frenzy Wrath tends to take another new approach that ties an older mechanic much more intimately into battle, into something you have to really pay attention to if you're going to use it, and that is the metal's nature. Now, if you are unfamiliar on metal natures, basically they're a set of passives that give you extra boosted numbers and particular stats, and basically help direct what kind of parts that a Metarot will passively target when it's their turn, especially at the start of the fight on turn 1 before everything gets started. When it comes to these particular parts, you have to be able to know what kind of natures you're looking for to capitalize on most. For instance, with right or left killer, you want to try to focus on a nature that specializes in looking for arms of varying degrees, or with leg killer, a nature that focuses on legs. But if you're able to do so and know what you're doing, you can capitalize on what Frenzy Wrath brings to the table pretty easily. Now, when it comes to numbers, Frenzy Wrath is a pretty chonky boy. I'm not gonna lie to you. With a base armor of almost 4,800 for the head, 4,200 per arm, and 4,500 for the legs, this warrior type is going to be pretty tough to take down, with a very healthy and above average HP pool, and given that he is triple heavy, that is to a point to be expected. When it comes to leg stats, he's packing about 837 for the base mobility, which is a very solid start for where he wants to be before any modifiers. And biped legs, briefly touching on it, means he will have pretty solid coverage across most terrains, and pretty diversified coverage at that, depending on compatibility. With an evade of 1104, not too shabby, much like it was with Pleasure Lust, so able to dodge or graze fairly easily as long as he's not in a no dodge state. A melee resist of over 2,000 of almost 2050 is really good though, as it means he can most certainly hold his own pretty well up close and personal. But a shoot resist at 1091, almost 1100, not terrible, kind of in that middle sweet spot of where you really want to be. But if you are going to combat Frenzy Wrath on the field, shooting attacks is definitely the way to go. And The ability of Through Fight with triple heavy support is actually pretty good as well, as it means that any melee attacks that he has, and would you look at that, all of his attacks are melee, grants a chance for his attacks to ignore defense for extra damage and bypass any active shields that are in play. So this gives him another extra ability and flag in crowd control to a point, because if there's someone trying to intercept him, Through Fight gives the ability for him to not only bypass who's trying to get in his way, so he's targeting exactly who he wants, but it's going to be as painful of a move as possible. All this being said, though, as a pure set score, I do have to rate Frenzy Wrath a pretty middle-of-the-road 6 out of 10, and being completely honest, I think I'm being kind of generous with that. That's not to say that his numbers are particularly terrible, because his heat-cool stats between all three parts are actually pretty nice, between the low 500s to mid 600s, in that nice mid-range where you want to be. A couple of the major concerns I want to bring to the table with Frenzy Wrath is not just the particular requirement of the killer-type moves targeting specific parts, but it's also of his success stats. As you see here, head stat at just barely 800 there for success, right arm at just almost 1,000, and left arm at just over 900. They're not terrible numbers, don't get me wrong, but if an enemy is particularly dodgy or flighty with a very high evade, he's probably never going to touch them. So that is another major weakness that Frenzy Wrath does bring to the table. And given that he is also triple heavy, it does mean that he is subject to anyone using heavy punish. Break, break rush, break hammer, anything of the like that is going to very easily destroy him or cripple him very easily before he even has the chance to break anybody or even try to break anybody on the field. However, he does have Through Fight working for him though, as even if he fails to meet the particular condition of the killer type moves, he is still able to hit notably harder because of Through Fight when it procs, and the bypassing shields does give him a little bit more of an advantage when it does come into effect. As mixed parts, I do have to rate him equally at a 6 out of 10 for these same reasons. Biped legs with Through Fight is probably going to be the most well-rounded and conventional part on him, because it's something very easy to meet, easy to use, and triple heavy support is a very solid perk as well. The killer moves, leg killer, right killer, left killer, they can be very incredibly powerful if used correctly, but again, you do have to make sure that you pay very close attention, not just to the particular part that you're targeting on his turn, but also you have to pay much closer attention to your metal's nature so that you can properly capitalize on which one you're planning to use.